And we are live on Facebook. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 5 o'clock hour where we're going to do something really fun that I've never done before, but I got so excited about it when I saw my friend Hannah Sanford doing this for Chris Winfield and Jen Gottlieb at a Super Connector Media event. And I'm going to let you see what she does here, but I'm going to give you what would typically be one of my normal presentations, and Hannah's going to graphically create a mural about the presentation as we go. So a couple of reasons I'm doing this. One is I really want the mural and a few of the other things that she'll tell you about that I'm going to get as part of this. But the second is any of you out there who are coaches or in your own businesses or doing events for corporate or anything where you might need or be able to incorporate this kind of work, which takes this kind of COVID Zoom stuff that we're doing now, and in my opinion, kind of really livens it up. So without further ado, Hannah, I'm going to turn this over to you. Everybody will be glad to know I'm popping all the way off the camera until we get to Q&A, because it'll be Hannah and a presentation deck from here on out. So I'm going to turn it over to you right now and exit the scene here. And then, once I remember how to do that, and then I will be back shortly. So I'm going to let Hannah introduce herself, folks.
Thanks so much, Pam. And thank you for inviting me to be here bringing your presentation and your work to life. I absolutely love doing that and appreciate the connection, as you mentioned, on Super Connector Media event. And actually love one of the best things about what I do is the people I get to work with. I get to learn so much. So I'm super excited to learn about your topic in particular.
Awesome. I love to talk about it, so we're even.
Perfect. So as you so eloquently mentioned, what I'm going to be doing is called graphic recording. As you can see behind me, there's a 4-foot by 8-foot mural. And right now I have the title on it, your name and the title of the presentation. And then as you speak, I'm going to be drawing out in words and pictures the key content live. So graphic recording is what I'm doing of presentations. And as you mentioned, sometimes I do work with whole groups of people, in which case it would be graphic facilitation through a process, whether that's executive teams or one-on-one coaching, that kind of thing. There's a whole number of different applications. Even like you said, Zoom meetings. There are lots of times where I'll just stand up and do this. And even if kids maybe did this, obviously small scale, even with just 8 by 11 pieces of paper, it would help get through Zoom school. So, or even adults, right? With all the Zoom
exactly. I didn't even think about education. You're absolutely right. This would really add something there.
Right. We stay more engaged and even standing up as well as drawing things out would make a big difference. So
great point.
Conversation. So as you said, there are lots of different collateral that comes out of this. There's the recording. We're doing this live. And then you're making a recording as well as the Facebook Live and other platforms probably as well. I'm making a time lapse of the studio from my other wall of my studio so you can see the whole thing sped up. And so that's one of my deliverables to you, as well as, like you said, the whole original mural that you can then use as a backdrop when you're doing talks or anything like that in person. I would also say that obviously we're doing this virtually because it's COVID times and we can do this virtually anytime, of course, but then in person, it's even better naturally. Awesome. So I look forward to doing that. And then the other deliverable is high-res images of the mural itself and some close-ups. So you can use those in all of your marketing materials, in your courses, et cetera, social media.
I love that. Especially this is why I think I was so attracted to it. For a subject like finance that people think is going to be boring, this really spices it up. You have something like this on a thumbnail that says, let's talk about your balance sheet. It might make somebody actually look who might not other than that too. So depending on your topics, folks, I think this could be really useful. And like I said, now you just made my head explode with the whole thing around education. My daughter teaches music as part of her scholarship program in the master's program. She teaches stipend issues, not scholarship, but she teaches elementary kids music. In fact, she teaches preschool kids music. And to have something like this happening in the background would be really cool for something like that. So educators out there, lots of options.
For sure. And some of my most, as you're saying, especially topics like finance, technical things, science, that kind of stuff are where a lot of my clients come from that because they want something. They have technical, complicated topics.
Yep.
So like you said, spice it up or bring a visual can really make a difference. So I'm delighted to be here with you and spread that.
Awesome.
Well,
All right. Well, I am going to test my eCam skills here and switch to a different scene. And what you're going to get is my presentation deck, folks, and then Hannah in the corner. And I may move her around a little bit on the screen as we go through the deck, but you can choose to look at the presentation deck or to watch Hannah. But we want to talk right now, especially as we come up on year end. And year end means taxes can be coming. Year end can mean it's time to go through those boxes of receipts and start gathering up all the information you need to report your taxes. And I know there's a lot of frustration, and especially as we get towards year end in business as entrepreneurs, this whole finance thing can be a little frustrating. So I want to talk about how you can kick that frustration to the curb. This is going to go for around half an hour, and then we're going to have Q&A at the end of it. So I'm going to go through reasonably quickly just because I think it'll be fun to see Heather keep up. But I'm going to go through relatively quickly on this so that, I'm not going to have you here for too long, but I want you to see the impact of what we're going to do and understand, even more importantly, no matter where you are in your business, you can kick finance frustration to the curb and make it your friend instead of your foe. So let's get to it. What are we going to cover here? We're going to talk about showing up in your business, okay? And we're going to then talk about what are the symptoms of finance frustration that sometimes keep us from showing up for this issue. We're going to talk about overcoming finance frustration and then some really simple things you can go and do between now and the end of the year to set yourself up beautifully for 2021. So we're going to talk about what's next. Now, next thing we want to do here is talk about what I fondly call the 67% CEO. And I credit my friend Angela Lauria for this concept. And the reason we have what I call 67% CEOs is because there's a portion of our business that we sometimes don't show up for. And I want you to think for a minute with me back to a time, even in this last year, where you set a goal for yourself. You were going to do something, and it can be anything. It can be weight loss. It can be saving money for a vacation once this whole COVID thing blows over. It can be spending more time with your kid. And if you think about that time and you think about that goal, make it one that you actually achieved. Then what I know happened is that when you hit the rough spots, when it got hard, you showed up. And the way you did that was you chose the protein bar over the cupcake, or you chose to hold off on buying that really cool piece of tech equipment so that you could put a little money in the bank for that vacation. Or you actually decided to put down that cell phone and look your kid in the eyeball and have a conversation with them. So when it got hard, when it got to breaking old habits, you jumped in and showed up. And that's what I want to talk about here, because really there are three different pieces of our business. And I'm going to move Hannah around a little bit here while I talk to you about this. The first piece is getting clients. So that's sort of the marketing piece. It's kind of sexy. It's fun to do. There's all sorts of training we can do for it. We learn how to do it. But we pay attention to it. We invest in that because we know we have to get clients into the business. The second piece that we're really good at is serving our clients, right? We know how to serve our clients. That's our special sauce. That's our superpower. That's when we're in our zone. Like, you don't even have to ask us to show up for that. We wake up and we're showing up for that piece of things. But then over here underneath Hannah right now, and I'm going to move her, is the third piece. And it's that finance piece. And we often don't show up for that finance piece. And I'll tell you what, if we only show up for 67% of our business, we only get 67% of the results. And it's the same for that personal goal you thought about when we talked a minute ago here. If you only showed up 67% of the time in trying to achieve that goal, you'd have had a less grand vacation, you would not have lost as much weight, and your kid would still think that you're always on the phone when you're with them. So what is it about that? What is it about that third component of business that keeps us from showing up? So in all the times and the thousands of entrepreneurs I've spoken to or worked with, I've come up with realizing that there are really 4 barriers to us showing up for the finances in our business. And the acronym SOFT or SOFT explains it. And I'm going to go through the 4 of these here and a way to overcome each one of them. So what are the 4? Let's just look at them here on the next screen. S is for shame, O is for overwhelm, F is for fear, and T is for time. Now, 2 of these, shame and fear, are psychological, and those are the hardest ones for us to deal with. The other 2 are kind of technical or practical, and there's some very practical tips for dealing with them. But let's talk about these harder ones first, the psychological things. And I believe, because myself in my business and every single entrepreneur I've talked to has fallen into one or more of these categories in thinking about the finances in their business. So let's talk about this shame thing. I want you to, for a minute, sit back and think about the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you with your finances. Okay, this is the worst part of the presentation, I promise. I just want you to think I am so embarrassed about my finances, be they personal or business, because fill in the blank. Okay, now, I want you to recognize that however many people are watching this either live or on replay, that many people filled in that blank. If you were at an event and you're in a room with people you see as absolutely amazingly successful influencers, those same influencers filled in the blank on that question when it was asked. Everyone has said this in every room, period. In every room, at every table, everybody has said, I'm so embarrassed about my finances because, and we all fill in that blank differently. Because I had to file for bankruptcy, because I don't even know what my bank balance is, because I don't understand accounting terms, because I wasted money on training I never used. You name it, everybody in the room has been there. So here's what I want to say about shame just for this presentation. Let's put it on the shelf. In this group, on this page, on my feed, shame about your finances is just not welcome. So take it and put it on the shelf, because everybody has been there and it's just not something to be ashamed of. So that to me is the biggest obstacle, is getting past the shame. The second psychological obstacle is fear, right? So I'm going to put up a little picture here in a minute of something most of you might recognize as a chutes and ladders board. And in Canada, my Canadian friends, you all call this the snakes and ladders, I believe, which is terrifying for children, might I add. I'm not sure why you call it snakes and ladders. But for us here in the States, it was chutes and ladders. And if you remember correctly, you rolled the dice, you moved a couple spaces, and you either were okay, nothing happened, and you did a little, okay, that was fine, or you hit a slide and slid down to a worse position on the board, or you got to the foot of a ladder and you were able to shoot up to the top of the board or shoot up a little bit on the board. And I don't know about you, but I always hit the slide at the very top right before you got to the win, and ended up coming all the way back down, and very rarely hit the one ladder that went all the way up the board. I remember vividly where those spots are on the board. So fear, in my mind, in the adult world, taking chutes and ladders into the real world of entrepreneurship, is that you have to roll the dice, because you don't know what's going to be at the end of rolling those dice. You're going to roll them. You have no idea which spot you're going to land on. The really cool thing about this is that the fear is of the unknown. It's because you don't know, right? So if I don't see it, I don't think it can hurt me, is kind of what you say. But in the back of your head, you have hovering around you, just like Eeyore, that gray cloud that says, I know I'm saying if I don't see it, it can't hurt me. But the truth of the matter is I have no idea what's going to happen when I take that next step. And that scares me, as rightfully it should. Once we can eliminate the chance of chutes and ladders, the throwing the dice, and think of the snakes or the chutes as obstacles and think of the ladders as opportunities. When you're rolling dice, you can't see the path, right? But if we change from having to roll the dice to move to where we can see the path and choose how to move, you can act. You can avoid or accelerate based on what you know, where you know you're going to land. then this becomes a whole different game for us, and it helps remove or mitigate the fear. So how do you get that line of sight? The cool thing is, even though shame and putting it on the shelf is really dealing with some of our worst money monsters, because I know it's easy to say put shame on the shelf, but I know even though I've pointed out that everybody has it, it doesn't make it easy for all of us to walk right through that. But with getting rid of your fear, the one thing that changes the game is a line of sight. And that we can do. That we can do really easily, as a matter of fact. And we do it with something called a forecast. And I'm actually going to show you at the end of this presentation, for those of you who want to stick around, how to do a very easy forecast that can get you ahead of the game on 2021 so that you're not walking into 2021 wondering where you're going. You can actually plot your path out. Now, instead of plotting a straight line, you're going to make sure you land here to shoot up this ladder, and you're going to come across over here and make sure you land here to shoot up this ladder, and you're going to get to your target. Now, granted, it's not a straight line, but we know entrepreneurship's not a straight line. But what you have is a map, a forecast, and all of a sudden you have sight. And when you have sight, you can remove that fear factor. Okay? So that's where we are now. We've handled the two psychological barriers, the toughest ones in my opinion, we've just taken care of. So now what are we going to do? We're going to move to, I'm doing these a little out of order from the slide on purpose because I didn't want to mess up my my lovely, I know it's not acronym. Somebody will be able to tell me what the actual word is when you use letters like this. Acronym is not it. But we'll deal with that another day. But I want to jump to time. Okay, and what the issue is with time. So as entrepreneurs, we are flooded with work to do all day, every day. And usually we're at home with either something else going on. We've got to make dinner. We got to take care of the pets, or we have a family and we have to take care of the family. We've got all this stuff to do. We don't have the time to be looking at a piece of paper that makes no sense to us. And a lot of times the way this manifests itself is I hear the thing that they've put in my hand that they tell me is my financials makes no sense. I know from my gut this is wrong. Why am I even looking at this piece of paper? Or just tell me where my money went, please. So what we do is we grab that piece of paper that we get, our monthly financial report, however it comes to us, and we put it in the infamous drawer. You know that drawer, the one we're going to get back to next week, or maybe we'll get back to it next month, or maybe we'll get back to it at the end of the year. And all of a sudden, what could have been a ton of valuable information is in the drawer. And over time, what happens to that drawer is it starts to look like this. And I'm going to move Hannah for a minute so you can see the full effect of shoving reports in a drawer. And the next thing you know for sure is you're not going to get to that drawer. So what was a one-page challenge now has become a closet full of challenge. And we want to avoid that. So how do we avoid that? We avoid that by understanding that a sheet of numbers alone is never going to be able to make sense about your business. Your business is not about numbers. Your business is about a story of your cash flow through your business model. So a sheet of numbers alone that just says, here are the things that you need to pay attention to, is not worth your time. And I would actually advise you, if you ever get a sheet of paper in front of you and you can't look at it and say, hey, here's what I can do with that information. Don't put it in a drawer, throw it in a trash can. Whoever gave that to you is not serving you well, because a sheet of numbers alone will never make sense and will always waste your time. So how do we turn this from something that's a waste of time into something that makes you go, oh, wow, I really want to spend the time on this, because now I know if I spend 10 or 15 minutes here, I'm going to all of a sudden either gain back time or make more money or gain back energy. Then that time becomes worth you investing. And the solution to make this information all of a sudden worthwhile to you is context. And what do I mean by context? There are two contexts we're going to talk about today. The context of time and the context of expectations. So let's go over this really quickly. And we're going to look at a very simple profit and loss statement here, also known as income statement and called various other things. But let's just keep it very simple and say we have revenue, we have expenses, and revenue minus expenses is net income. So under normal conditions, you really only get say it's November now, a sheet of paper that tells you, here's what I did in November. I had 20 in revenue. I had 10 in expenses. Oops, sorry, I make myself go backwards. I had 10 in expenses, and 20 minus 10, I had net income of 10. Well, that doesn't tell you anything. That doesn't tell you a story. But when all of a sudden you tell your bookkeeper or your accountant or whoever's providing you reporting to give you 12 months worth of information and show you those same numbers and how they've changed over time, all of a sudden some stories pop out. And once this piece of paper becomes something that tells you a story about your business, then you've got something you can work with. Then you've got something that you can leverage into a really valuable piece of information. So look, I can look back at this and go, oh, when I look at that 20 right now and look at what's happened in my revenue over the year, the last time I hit that was in July. So what do these 2 months have in common? And boy, look at February and March. Those are really low for revenue. So what's interesting about this is, oh yeah, my clients like to go to Disney World in February and March. I may be able to do some marketing that's got a Disney related theme on it. And if I do that, then maybe I can get a few more clients in this time frame. Because geez, my expenses stay the same right there. I know they've grown over the year because my revenue's been going up. And if you look at your expenses, you see them going up over the year. But I need to make sure that I still maintain, especially next year, since my expenses are higher. When I hit January and February, I don't want to take that same dip. Well, right there in 30 seconds, we've gotten more out of this single piece of paper that has 12 columns on it than you're ever going to get out of a piece of paper that just has your November numbers on it. And I can go on here a little bit, but hey, what does drive this awesome revenue in November and December and in June and July? Let's do more of that. What drives this amazing dip here in August and September? And by the way, I lost money in those 2 months. So what can I do differently next year? Can I do something to drive that revenue up? Can I go on vacation that month because I don't have the clients anyway and save some of the expenses that I've got? Or do I need to make sure that I have a credit line available to cover that loss? But now this becomes a storyteller. Now it's telling you about the cash flow in your business. It's looking at your business and saying, hey, I know that story. That's what happened in my business this month. So that's the context of time. The second context is compared to expectations. So what you'll see here is I've isolated, let's just look at February, for example, and under normal conditions, the piece of paper you might get might say, hey, in February, I had 5 in revenue, I had 5 in expenses, I had 0 net income. There's no story there. But there does become a story when you're able to say, if you look at the column right next to it, I expected to have revenue of 12. Oops. I expected to have revenue of 12. I expected to have expenses of 5 and therefore net income of 7. So what happened here? I had revenue of 5. Wow, that's 7 less than I thought. Okay, cool thing here about revenue. Only one of two things could have happened. I either sold fewer of what I was selling, or I charged a lower price and sold as many as I thought I was going to sell. But one way or another, there's a difference here, and this tells me a story. Whatever I tried didn't work. So either I didn't get enough calls in the door or sales calls or leads in the door, or I priced it too low. A lot of us know that when you have that pricing conversation, sometimes I coach a lot of people on that. I have a whole nother presentation on that I may have Hannah do some graphic arts for me. But pricing is one of the toughest things for my clients, and I coach them on it a lot. Maybe I didn't price right. But now I've got a story in here against expectations. So all of a sudden, the 10 minutes we've spent on our financials has told us a story and given me some actions I can take. And once you know there are actions you can take, now you know the business levers that are on this piece of paper. You know, and you're getting a piece of paper put in front of you that says, I need to do A, B, C, and D. Now all of a sudden that's worth your time. That's not going to go in a drawer. So we're getting rid of shame because I asked you a favor to shelve it. We're getting rid of fear with a forecast. We're getting our line of sight on the future. And we're going to deal with making sure you make good use of your time by getting your numbers given to you in context. And all you have to do for that, by the way, little quick hack here, say to your bookkeeper, hey, bookkeeper, anytime you give me a report, I want to see 12 rolling months of information on that report. Don't ever give me a piece of paper without 12 rolling months of information or a comparison against my estimate. You have every right to ask for that from your bookkeeper, from your accountant, etc. All right, so now let's go to the O, the overwhelm. So what are some of the symptoms of overwhelm? These are the things I hear. I've just let it go too long. I have no idea where to start with this. I definitely don't know who I can trust. This is my money, for God's sake. I want to kill my bookkeeper. Nothing makes sense when I see these reports. I've got this dang drawer piling up with everything in it. And then there's the infamous box. What's the box, right? For a lot of folks, when they start off in their businesses and even well into year 2 and 3, rather than keeping track of things in Excel or in a bookkeeping software, they go ahead and they grab this box and they shove their receipts in it. And I say they as if I've never done this. Well, that's a lie. I did it myself the first couple of years of my business. You throw those receipts in a box because, I'll get to them at the end of the year. I'll go through them. I'll attach them to all the expenses and we'll be able to deal with that. Well, it usually takes up your entire dining room table. The box ends up looking like this. And I should move Hannah again so you can get the full effect of that box. That's where the receipts box looks like after a couple of years. I'll put Hannah back there. Hope she's not getting motion sick. But that's what it ends up looking like, because you have to now all of a sudden go through these things, pull it all together, go through your bank statements, figure out what were business expenses, get it to your tax accountant. And a lot of times, as it turns out, we end up not filing those taxes. And there are plenty of other things that are overwhelm symptoms, but this is a really good list. And I'm guessing if you're overwhelmed by your finances, one of these things might have resonated with you, or you were able to fill in your blank. So what do we do about that? Well, there's a 3-step cure for overwhelm. SOB. I take great pleasure in presenting it this way. And the SOB stands for separate, organize, and business model. And we're going to walk through these kind of individually here. But what do I mean by separate? This simple. Get a separate bank account for your business, okay? It's so important to do. Not only because it keeps things separate and then you don't have to, at the end of the year, figure out which of your expenses were business and which were personal and get 3 or 4 different opinions on whether you can deduct things and all of that. It just keeps it clean and separate for you, and you don't have to do that year-end race to the finish line. When you get a new bank account for a business, by the way, you can often get a credit card aligned with that business bank account. Now, absolutely the best practice is to set up a company for your business, okay? Either a sole proprietorship or an LLC. Tons of reasons to do one or the other of those. We're not going to get into that today. But very simply, if you want a business bank account, you can actually very easily in every state, you can find it on Google with the Department of State. How do I set up my business? And they will give you all the information you need to set up a business in the state. Once you've done that and can prove it, you can go to the bank and open a bank account in that business's name. And when you do that, they'll often offer you a credit card. It will have a low limit on it, but they'll offer you a credit card. And you can start building some credit in that business's name. But that's a best practice. Second best is just go set up a separate checking account for your business, second personal checking account. But then start keeping them separate. Use one checking account for your personal stuff and one checking account for your business stuff. Now, if you're like anybody, including myself, you're saying, why? Why do I want to do this? Okay, the reason you want to do this is because it separates you from your business and makes you recognize that this isn't a hobby anymore. This is a business that I am in to make money. And there are various reasons to make money. There's personal financial success. There's setting up charitable trusts. There is being a not-for-profit and being able to pay a staff to run the not-for-profit. You name it. There are tons of reasons. But this move psychologically moves you to a different place. So that's a big impact to have. When you see that checkbook, and anymore we don't use checkbooks, I guess it's an old term. I'm dating myself. But when you see a checkbook or you see something that says, hey, this is my business, it really changes your whole approach to what you're doing in your business. The other thing is it eliminates the year-end dread of the box in the drawer. The minute you do this, you no longer have to worry about keeping your receipts separate. Because here's the thing, that anything you pay for with this checking account is business and anything you pay for with this checking account is personal. Therefore, you only need to keep the receipts if you pay for it with your business account. And stick with me because I'm going to make that receipt thing even easier and completely obsolete in a second. Okay? Because the other thing this does is it sets us up for step 2. And step 2 in the SOB profile here is organize. All right, so here we go. Here's the thing. Get an online bookkeeping tool. And I'm going to tell you the whys for this as well, because it's so important. And there are tons of them out there. There's FreshBooks, there's QuickBooks, there's Xero, you name it, they're out there. But the thing about these that make them so cool is you can automatically hook up your bank account to this thing. Once you automatically hook up your bank account to this thing, and you've got a separate account because you've just separated them back before, you no longer have to remember anything because all your business transactions are automatically going to come into this bookkeeping tool. And you'll never have to go through a statement again. You'll never have to go matching receipts again. Because the other really cool thing is you'll spend, say, 30 minutes a week reviewing the transactions that come in and classifying them. Or if you want to, best practice is to get a bookkeeper to do the grunt work. There are people trained for this. There are people like me who don't find that to be grunt work. We find it to be therapeutic. So find a bookkeeper who will do that and love it and get that part of it done for you, because you will never have to keep another receipt. And this is true for Canadians and Americans. If there are any other countries right now, I can't speak for them. But scanned receipts operate for the CRA and for the IRS as evidence of expenditure. And what you can now do is take a really quick picture of it with your phone, and you don't even have to classify it or anything. It automatically feeds into your software, whatever your bookkeeping tool is, and it'll automatically match it up to the transaction when it shows up on your credit card or your bank account. So you can throw that receipt away. I now just, when I go, well, not anymore, but when I would go out to a business meal, I would take a picture of that receipt and I'd throw it away because I knew it was going to be handled from there. I didn't have to touch it again. So there's no more box and there's no more drawer. There's no more data input. You don't have to get to the end of the year and hand key everything into an Excel spreadsheet for your tax accountant. Tax has actually become a real honest to God button click. You literally add your tax accountant to your software with an email ID. They get in there and get what they need. And they may call you with a couple questions, but you don't have to put anything together for them. You don't have to scramble to attach receipts. You just say, hey, it's there. Come look at it. Okay? And I think I talk about taxes in a little bit, but if I don't, I have to make sure and circle back. But then the third thing it does is it lays the groundwork for the next stage of the business. Because all we've talked about here is how we're making this easier for you, which is what we want to do. But the reason we want to make it easier for you is so that it becomes really useful to you in your business. And the way that this stuff becomes useful to you in your business is if you can see your numbers in real time as they relate to your business model. So what is a business model? Don't overcomplicate it. Business model is this easy. What stuff do you use? Who do you get it from? How does it get to you? How do you use that stuff? What do you create with that stuff? And who do you sell it to? And how does it get to them? That's as complicated as a business model is. And let me just go through this as an example. And I'm going to make this up on the fly and I'm going to make it Heather. And I'm going to say, what stuff does Heather use? Well, Heather uses camera equipment and artist's tools and big, huge sheets of paper and probably some software on the computer in order to do the graphic arts works. That's the stuff she uses. So where does she get it? So we want to list the sources that she gets all that stuff from. Maybe she has a great relationship with Staples or an art supply store. So who are those people she gets it from? And I'll tell you why we ask these questions for a minute. And then how does it get to you? Well, today with COVID, it's delivered to your door. So nothing too complicated about that. And then how do you use that stuff? So she uses it. She'll deplete her paper stock because she's using it on the wall. She'll deplete her markers because they run out of ink. She won't deplete her software. She'll have that forever. So it's understanding the big components of your business. What are they? Who do you get it from? How does it get to you? And how do you use it? Then what do you create with that stuff? Well, I don't have to say a thing, because right here I can show you by making Heather a little bit larger. This is what she creates with that stuff, right? And that to me is the most important thing, because that is the special sauce. So we've gotten all the stuff in the door that Heather needs to do what she does. She's creating her magic as we speak right now. So who does she sell this to? And so we talked about that at the beginning of the program. There are people she can do this for, and this is just one arm of her business. She does other stuff as well, but let's just talk about this arm. She can sell it to coaches. She can sell it to event managers, teachers, administrators of school districts, anybody, technical scientists, anybody who needs to add something of this value to what they're presenting. Okay. And then finally, how does it get to them? And she talked about that as well. She's going to mail me the big poster. She's going to email me all of the digital stuff. So we've just done Heather's business model. And I actually, when I work with clients here, I kind of draw it like a house. How does stuff come in the door? What do we do with the stuff in the house? How does stuff go out of the door? So just understand this for your business. That's what the business model is all about. And now all of a sudden, you've done the SOB and taken care of the last piece of this, which is the overwhelm. So what are the next steps? You want to know your business model. You want to know what to ask for of your bookkeeper and your accountant. You want context. You want anything they give you to be in context of that business model, of time, and of expectations. You want to map out what you think your numbers are going to be. Create a forecast. I'm going to show you quickly how to do that at the end of this if you want to hang on. You want to open a bank account. You want to get a bookkeeper. And you want to review your monthly numbers in that context over time and versus expectations. What that's going to allow you to do is identify all those obstacles and opportunities on the chutes and ladder board. And in real time, rather than once a year when the accountant gives you your tax return and says, here's how much you owe, in real time, you can plan, you can pivot, you can adjust. Okay. And that's what's so huge for business owners. You can do something with the information we've just talked about putting together for you. All right. So now here's the extra bonus that's included in our presentation today. So I'm allowed to go over my 30 minutes because we have a bonus. I talked about forecasting. How do we do a forecast? I don't know the first thing about forecasting. The word can be intimidating because huge businesses and corporations do cash flow forecasts. I'm going to show you how to do a very easy cash flow forecast that any entrepreneur can do. The cool thing about this is I have used this exact tool in $300 million operations and in a startup that had no cash at all yet. Okay, so this tool is very versatile and it's very easy. And it's something that if you're in my group or on my page, you probably already have access to. But check the resources in Facebook group, on my page, on my website. You will find this there for free with a video explaining it in more detail. And there's a pre-built Excel template for you. So what are we going to do? We're going to do a 12-week rolling forecast. I'm going to show you what that means. Except for the first week, it's going to take about 15 minutes a week of your time. Okay? That's it. The first week, it might take half an hour or an hour. Why are we doing this? Going back to the chutes and ladders board, you're going to know ahead of time where the obstacles are. You're going to have the agility to avoid them and to take advantage of opportunities with some real confidence. And you're going to have a tool that lets you play out different decisions, different things. If I change this, what happens? If I change that, what happens? And all of a sudden, you could sleep well because the gray cloud's gone, because now you can see what's coming. So let's talk about this and how easy it actually is to do. Let's talk about week one, which takes the most time. Okay, when you do week one, it might take you half an hour. What do you need when you start? You need the blank Excel model that looks exactly like this thing you're seeing on the screen. And you need your bank statement. And you can get that online or you can get that in hard copy. But when I say bank statement, I am simply talking about your checking account here. You might have 20 credit cards. You might have one credit card. You might have no credit cards. You don't need those for this exercise. We are simply going to be talking about the cash that goes in and out of your bank account because, quite frankly, cash is king. Cash is all in business we ultimately really care about on the financial side. We have a bazillion different numbers and things and way we talk about it, but cash is what drives all of it. So all you need is your checking account, bank statement, savings account. If you have it, you can add that balance in as well. And you're going to write in on week one. I like to do this on Sunday. So let's say we're just starting week one and it's Sunday. I'm going to look at Saturday night's bank balance and I'm going to hand key that in and say it was $1,000. I'm going to hand key in $1,000 on this spreadsheet. And then I'm going to think ahead and say, what do I think my cash is, or the money that I'm going to get from sales, going to be next week? Now, I know this is hard. This is not easy, but I will propose that's a little easier than you might think it is on first notice. It's pretty easy to say, I have no idea how much cash is coming in the door next week. But I challenge you to sit down and really think about it, and I'll bet you can pretty closely identify how much cash is going to come in the door next week. You know if somebody owes you money. You know about how many sales calls you get a week and how many you convert and how much people pay, whether on a payment plan or in one big fell swoop. You know that stuff, okay? So give it your best shot. Say that you determine I'm going to make $2,500 in cash, and that means cash going to be deposited in my bank account next week. All right, now let's think about the outgoing payments. Now, there's a couple things you can do here. Best thing is to look at your bank statement for the last few months and say, okay, in this particular week of the month, I know that I have a credit card payment of $1,000, and I know that I pay my admin every week $100. Okay, now that you've put all those things in, what we think is going to happen next week is we're going to add $2,500 in sales to our $1,000 bank balance, and we're going to spend $1,100 of our money. And that's going to leave us with an ending balance of $2,400 if things go the way I think. And guess what? That's going to be the beginning balance for week 2. So I'm going to sit here now, still at the beginning of week 1, and project what's going to happen in week 2. I know I'm going to start with $2,400. Now sales get a little harder to predict 2 weeks out, but I'm going to go ahead and say I think I'll get $2,000 that week because I know Joe owes me $1,000 and I should make at least one other sale. I know I have to pay my admin. So when I add the $2,000 to my beginning, pay my admin, I'll have $4,300 left at the end of the week. And that becomes the beginning balance for week 3. And you're just going to continue on at that first sitting and project this for the whole 12 weeks. And just be honest about the numbers and what you think is going to happen and drop the numbers in there. Now, 2 or 3 things I want to say about this. One is this thing in total, it's going to be dead dog wrong. Absolutely dead dog wrong. But the really cool thing about this is we're going to, at the end of week 1, put what actually happened in this week 1 column. And when we do that, we're going to see where we were right and wrong. What payments did we miss? Was our credit card payment lower or higher than we thought it was going to be? What did happen with those incoming sales? And when you do that, when you put those actuals in week 1, all of a sudden you're going to have a lot more information about how to fill out week 2, 3, 4, 5 through 12. So you're going to go ahead and update those weeks with the new information you just learned. And you're going to add a 13th week on here, because that way you'll always have a 12-week rolling forecast. And again, a lot more detail on this in the file that you can have access to. And I'll even put the link to that in the comments on this post as well. But all that's available to you. The other thing that's really interesting about this is that you can look at this, for example, on this one and go, holy cow, I run out of money in week 3. I've got 800 negative, 1,000 negative, 1,600 negative, and then 1,300 negative. Well, we know a bank balance can't do that. Let's pretend we don't have the luxury of overdraft. So in looking at that, you've got to make some decisions. Again, this becomes something that tells you a story. So you can say, hey, yikes, I'm going to cut back a little bit on my credit card payments here and do a little more of that later in the 12 weeks. I'm going to slow down and instead of taking that extra $3,000 to put in savings this week, I'm going to move it and take it out here on week 11. And when I do that, all of a sudden these numbers will go positive. Or I can say, nope, this is what I've got to spend. I can't get around it. But I'm okay because I have a credit card with $5,000 of credit accessible that I'll be able to use to pay some of this stuff out. And then I won't have a negative cash balance. And the other thing you can say is, wow, look at that. Over time, I'm really building my bank balance. That's good. If you looked at this and it went the other way and over time you weren't building that bank balance, you could start to assess, wow, I really need to drive new sales, or I need to not have the admin, or I need to remove my rent cost because it just doesn't make sense anymore. So this is the benefit of a simple, direct forecast. It lets you look at things, make decisions ahead of time so that you don't come trip over that $800 landmine right in week 3. You know well ahead of time what's going on. Okay? So here we've done it. We've taken care of shame because we put it on the shelf. We've taken care of overwhelm by going through our 1, 2, 3 SOB process. We've taken care of fear with a forecast. And we've taken care of time by putting things in context. So now I'm going to open it up to some Q&A, and I'm going to change the screen here because I did get a few questions in advance of this to the people that I talked to, and I've seen a couple of more. So let me change the screen here back to, where do I want to be? We're going to put Hannah front and center. Oh my God, Hannah, that looks awesome. Great job. I'm going to throw me in here on the right. Nope, that's just me. That's not what I want. Let's add. There we go. Now we've got both of us. So let's chat a minute about some of the questions that I often get when I do this presentation, and 2 that I got ahead of time. One is, what do I do? Why do I have to get this business account? I really don't want to do it. I can keep track of things. And I just want to reemphasize how easy it is to do. You don't actually have to start a new business, although I recommend that you start a business. You don't have to. You can just open a second account. And when you do that, just that act alone of having any money you make from the business go into that account and any expenses you pay from the business come out of that account, takes it from hobby to business. You all of a sudden recognize that it has to feed itself and it's got to feed you so that in your personal account, you can feed yourself. It gets us to the point of understanding how to pay you. If you don't do that, it can get awfully mucked up and you might never be taking any money out of that business. You might not actually be earning anything and never know it. This makes it very clear how much you're paying yourself. And that's something that's so important to build in as you're a startup business owner before you really get down the road. The other question I get a lot is, how do I find this bookkeeper that I need? And you say, get me a bookkeeper, or how do I find one? Is it expensive? Well, the bottom line is it's not horribly expensive, and it removes something that's not your real power, your real superpower from your plate so that you can focus on what you love to do. The thing you want to do when you hire a bookkeeper is make sure that they understand what we covered in this presentation, that you want to see your numbers on time. That's within 5 or 6 days of the end of the month, and you want to see them in context, and you want them to be able to put whatever forecast you have in their system for you so that when you get reports, they're meaningful. And just a little secret hack here that I have is that when you're interviewing a bookkeeper, try this out. Go ahead and let them start the call and ask you whatever they're going to ask you on their sales call, and listen to how they say some words. Like, for example, say they say, what's your revenue and what's your expense base or something. When you answer them, use different words. Say something like, well, my income is, $30,000 a month and my fixed costs are $20,000 a month. What you're going to be testing for here is seeing when they talk to you about those things the next time, did they switch to your terminology or did they use their own? You have the right to determine what things are called in your business for management financial purposes. This is a gold mine of data sitting on your bank statements that they're going to convert into meaningful information. Now, you can pay them to do that just for your tax accountant once a year, but you might as well make sure you've got somebody that can turn it into meaningful information that tells the story of your business like we were able to do on the couple of examples we showed you. So that's just a little hack for when you talk to a bookkeeper. Where are we here then? Oh, there's a new one. When do I need a CFO? Great question. I actually wrote a book that has a whole chapter on that that's free to people, and it's actually in the same link where you can get the spreadsheet that I'm telling you about to do your cash flow forecasting. So you probably need a CFO if you're asking any questions about things other than just keeping track of transactions. Okay. A CFO is a strategic partner with you, is looking at the overall business and the way you think about it and making sure that your finances are aligned in a way that supports your strategy, provide you the information you need to know to make decisions. There are controllers that can do that. There are some really good bookkeepers who can do that. You probably rise to the level of CFO if you're thinking of things like selling your business, acquiring other businesses, expanding really quickly to scale your business exponentially, to double it or triple it over the next year or so. You want to make sure you have somebody that understands what systems are necessary, what systems are unnecessary from a financial standpoint, and can keep pace with you. The other thing is when you get to that point where you need a friend in the foxhole. A CFO is somebody who is in corporate America, usually the second highest paid executive at every company. And the reason for that, when you get into the Fortune 50 and 500, is because they are the right hand of the CEO. There's my staff getting a little loud out there. They're ready for dinner. They're the right hand of that CEO. And a good CFO for you, whether you are just starting out and going to try and line up investors, or whether you are just starting out in a coaching business and you really want to understand how to make this business scale into something so that you're not the only person who does everything all day, every day, that the CFO becomes the friend in the foxhole for those conversations. You have employment conversations, you have law conversations, you have tax conversations, you have personal exhaustion conversations. And they're the one that makes sure all of the pieces are lined up so that you have as much of a chance of success as you can. I've often said that a really good CFO is more than a CFO. They're a chief of staff because they're really managing all the things around you so that you can shine in your business. So that's a long-winded answer. There's a much more technical answer or succinct answer in the book, which you will have access to when I drop the link in below this post. So there we go. The best question I've seen here is, how do I access Hannah? And that is a great question because I'm getting mesmerized by the work she's doing, and I should be paying attention to what I'm saying. But I'm going to go ahead and let you guys connect with her both in the comments on here. If you tag her, she'll get them. But if you want to DM me, and I'll make a connection for you, or you can DM her directly. If you're friends with her, feel free to do that. Or if you'd like me to make the connection, I'm glad to do that in Messenger as well. That's the best way to get a hold of her because this is pretty amazing. And I'm just going to zoom out one more time so I can see this awesome work. Let me get me out of the way here. How do I get me out of the way? I get me out of the way by doing that. Look at that. I had no idea that. Oh my God, look at that picture of me. That's so cool. That's so fun. See, Hannah's work's not done. She's still filling in the pieces, but that is awesome, Hannah. All right. I cannot thank you enough. I have put you guys through this for 50 minutes, and thanks for hanging in there, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay. I am absolutely thrilled that you're here. I hope this was useful to you. If it was, feel free to share it. Both Hannah's information and the information on how to kick your finance overwhelm to the curb. You know I love these sessions. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Have a fantastic rest of week. Take care, you all.